Good afternoon, everyone. At this time, I'd like to ask our student panelists to come join me on the stage, if you don't mind. Should be 6. All right. As we approach the end of the summit, I hope that you found this, the information that we've provided to be both interesting and useful. And while I have possession of this microphone for a short period of time, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your week to join us here. Realize that many of you have traveled a distance to be here, and we appreciate the effort you've made to join us. I'd also like to thank the student panelists as well for joining us. I know many of you are probably taking finals as recently as probably this morning, so thank you very much. If you've ever had the opportunity to attend a veteran session or a workshop that contained a student veteran who chose to share his or her story, chances are that it was probably that piece that you walked away thinking about. It's often the most interesting and impactful piece of a session. And to the credit of the planning committee, we realized that, and so we chose to have the student panel towards the end of our summit for that purpose. And for those of you who attended the Welcome Home session or the Teaching Strategy session, today's moderator is no stranger. But for those of you who didn't have a chance to attend either of those sessions, I want to introduce you to Dr. David Joseph. David Joseph currently provides treatment for veterans with readjustment, stress, and combat or military sexual trauma at the Oakland Vet Center. As a psychologist at the National Center for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorders, Dr. Joseph served as the primary clinician on a multi-year study of seeking safety in veterans with co-occurring PTSD and substance use disorders. In addition to these trainings, Dr. Joseph has developed trainings for police officers, first responders, and providers on effective interventions for veterans with PTSD. He completed his clinical internship at Napa State Hospital and received his PhD in clinical psychology from Alliant University in San Francisco. So please welcome our moderator, Dr. David Joseph.
So now for the best part of the conference. What we're going to be doing on this panel is following a structured plus not structured approach, where what we're going to do is we're going to ask our student veterans to answer some questions that I've prepared for them and that we've reviewed together to give you a better sense of the kind of experiences they've had coming home, and just to give you a better sense of the varied degree, I would say the diverse experiences they've had in the military and out of the military. What we're going to do is after we've done with those questions, we're then going to open it up for you all to ask questions directly of them. What I've suggested to them was that, number one, that they and only they are in charge of what they choose to share and what they choose not to share, and that if they don't like one of your questions, they're not going to answer it. So ask good questions, but definitely do feel free to ask questions, and hopefully this will be a really good experience for you all. What we're going to do is start right here with the first question. State your name, age, branch of service, and years of service with a short narrative of what you did, locations of deployments, and so on and so forth, what you did in the military.
My name's Joseph Cook. I was a Staff Sergeant in the United States Marine Corps. I joined in 1992, and I was retired in 2003. I served in Somalia, Kosovo, and Afghanistan. I was actually in a Special Operations Unit.
My name is Jeremy Taylor. I'm 26. I was an infantryman in the United States Army. I was in the Army for 8 years. I got out last year in November and deployed to Afghanistan.
Hi, my name is Patrick Krouse. I'm 33 years old, part of the U.S. Air Force. I joined in '97, got out in 2005, was deployed at Saudi Arabia twice.
Hello, my name is Miriam Puente. I'm 33. I spent 10 years in the Army. I served as an executive administrative assistant in Iraq for the C7, the engineer cell. And I was over there in the end of 2004, pretty much all of 2005. And I was a sergeant.
My name is Joshua Villalta. I served in the United States Marine Corps for 4 years, from 2005 to 2009. I was a supply administration. I also did motor transport, and I deployed to Iraq. And when I came back from Iraq, I was the battery administrative clerk.
Okay, wait, stay there. We'll just come back the same way. If you could talk a little bit about readjustment challenges that you experienced leaving the military, any in general and in particular those that you might have experienced coming back to school.
For me, it would probably be just trying to talk about my experiences with my family members, them not really understanding what I went through, sometimes my anger issues or whatever I had, just the fact that people didn't really appreciate what they had, especially after a deployment and realizing how good we really have it here. They didn't really comprehend that. And then as far as school was concerned, just some of the students were, being themselves. Not that that's anything wrong, but for me, just kind of like, man, get your stuff together. That was one of the hardest things for me, was just learning to transition from my short military career to back to the civilian world.
Thank you.
For me, it was slightly different because I had been out of the service for 2 years. And for me, everything kind of changed because I ended up getting divorced. So it was a lot of more reasons. I ended up moving back to California as a single parent now, moving in with my parents. And it was very difficult being completely responsible and independent from the age of 18. Now at 30, I'm moving back in with my parents with a child, and then coming back to school. So I had a lot of, not just as a veteran, I had a lot of more issues, which definitely it took time. For me, when I came back, I was I'm a quiet person to begin with, but I really shut off from a lot of people. I would go to school, I didn't talk to anybody. I just pretty much kept to myself. It wasn't until the actual Veterans Center opened up that I started working there as a work-study, that I started opening up, talking to other veterans because I felt comfortable. A lot of them understood the issues that I was having. So for me, and that also helped me learn a lot and finally seek out the help that I needed.
Thank you.
Well, coming out of the Air Force, they did their best to give us briefings and tell us how the real world was, and resume conferences. And I kind of was fortunate as far as to find a job that was employed a lot of veterans. So it was kind of good leaving a family and joining a family. The uncertainty of the stability the military had, and knowing that, whether it's contract by contract, you're going to be in for a certain amount of time, and then coming into the economy as it was and became, stability was an issue. It's kind of ironic sometimes how divorce and military go hand in hand as well, because I was actually getting out of divorce, or in a divorce, however you want to say it, out of the military, because I'm not sure the stability had anything to do with it, but there's a lot of issues you have to deal with, family. So that was a challenge, because in the military they have counselors for all that kind of stuff, and you know where to go. When you leave those gates, it's like, where do you go now? So the challenges was just maybe more personal than it was getting a job necessarily, but I learned to deal with it, I guess.
I think one of the biggest challenges I faced was I have a family, so I'm also the support of my family, like the breadwinner, if you want to call it that. And getting out, I realized as infantryman, I didn't have a lot of skills that the civilian world was looking for. So that was a big shock. Well, not really, but just my skills didn't I was a war fighter, and so those things are really good inside the military, but outside of that, employers just aren't looking for that. And so that was a big eye-opener. That basically I went from being 8 years in the military to having to go back to school to be competitive in the job market.
I was retired early in the conflicts. When I first got out of the military, it was a challenge to be able to find people to relate to that had my experience and seen some of the things I did. And especially when returning to school, when I'm sitting in a class with a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-olds, and we're discussing ethical issues and things of that nature, and I hear them, their ethical issues are, this young lady's friend is mad at her because she's speaking to one of her friend's ex-boyfriends. And they're trying to figure out how to resolve that conflict, and do you turn the other cheek to your enemy? And when I hear, do you turn your cheek to your enemy, they're asking me, do I turn my cheek to somebody that's trying to kill me? And that's the amount of exposure that they've had to the world is extremely highlighted for me. And it can be very challenging and frustrating to sit in class with people that have such limited world experience and have almost no life experience at this point. And it can be challenging when you're in class and you're there because you have a goal that you want to achieve, and half the people there would rather be texting on their phones or doing anything but be sitting in class, where you're trying to better yourself and actually have a goal you want to achieve. And a lot of times when the faculty don't maintain order in class, I spent 11 years in the Marines. I was responsible for up to 36 other service members in combat environments. If somebody doesn't take control, I will, because I'm there for a reason, and I have something I want to accomplish, and this is my money that's being used here, and it's very disturbing to me to have other people disrupt my learning environment.
And if I could just break with our questions for a second, how many here on the panel can relate to that particular thing? Yeah, does anyone else want to comment on it?
Because when, 18, 19, you're joining the military and you're given millions of dollars of equipment and you're trained how to shoot, gun issues. I understand in California. I grew up in Texas, I'm sorry. And I joined the Air Force. I really can't say much about it. My dad was retired Army, so I grew up with that myself. So I had the maturity understanding about gun control, for example. But you get in a debate like that in class with the kids that just haven't been out there yet, and they're even older than what I was when I joined the military. It's definitely an interesting conversation topic, or you want to call them stupid kids. They're really not. I know they're not, but it's just like, really? to experience the same thing that some of us may have had, it is an eye-opener, and it is you have to control your patience, and it's a challenge sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate. We live in a fairly affluent area, and I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I had to get my mom and dad's permission to join. And I went to Somalia literally as soon as I came out of school. I was with my unit for 2 weeks, and we deployed to Somalia. And at 20 years old, I was in charge of 3 other Marines. And I'm sitting in class with kids that are 21, 22 years old that can barely hold down a part-time job. They can't show up to class. And I hear them cry to their teachers because their lives were so stressful they couldn't turn an essay in that was due. And that's very challenging for me when I look at my life and my past, and I hear them complain and talk about the issues that they have. And it's very frustrating for me.
Yeah, thanks. Any other thoughts about that? Okay. Well, what about the reason or reasons that you chose to attend school? Why did you go back to school? We'll go back the same way.
Right after I was retired, I went to work for a sheriff's department in Southern California and got laid off there. And then I went to work for a large corporation here in the States and happened to get laid off there. And is at the point to where, if, like I mentioned earlier, if I could find a job where I could parachute in a neighborhood, hide out, and take pictures of people, I'd do great. But unfortunately, that's not a real big call for that right now. And so I needed to find another way to make myself relevant to the job market. And the only avenue I have is to go to school and seek an education to make myself employable.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat. Just I went back to school to stay competitive. It's a struggle when you're 26 and you're at the same education level as a 18 or 19-year-old. and it kind of amazes me. Like, even though I've done all this like cool stuff and had all these experiences, that it's a struggle just going back at 26 and just like, wow, like I have to do another 4 years to start off the bottom of somewhere else, you know.
Competitiveness, that's really the big issue, I think. A lot of the military training and military schooling, I failed to mention, I was a civil engineer, electrician. So they give us all these schooling, and I mean, they, on the spot, everything you need to know, they teach you. A lot of that doesn't translate to the civilian world. It's like, after 8 years, I was in charge of a crew, you know, building most of the utilities, putting together buildings. So it's like, you know, you get out and you're saying, I can do this. Well, no, you have to start down here and kind of start from scratch again. And that's a little frustrating. It's not that I'm not willing to put in the work again, but it's like, you know, you get so far in your life, and it's also personal goals, maybe. It's like, you know, to have to start over, and then it's frustrating. So, I mean, I'm willing to put in the work, and then you go do the work from the bottom up, and it's like all you needed was a college degree to be a little higher up. It's like I just wish that military experience translated a little bit better. I mean, some of the credits, for example, I mean, it was technically school that I went to, you know, in the military, but a lot of those credits didn't transfer to the civilian world. So that was frustrating. So just to be competitive in the market, you know, you have to have that piece of paper. It says bachelor's or master's. So that's what we're trying to do here.
For me, that was always a goal that I wanted to accomplish. My parents, I was born in Mexico. I was not born in the U.S. I was brought here as a 7-year-old, so my parents they don't even have really an education. My dad's been working since he was a child, so for him it was always important to, for us not to have to work so hard to earn a living and to provide for our family. And then for me, like I said, that was always a personal goal that I always wanted to accomplish. And especially after getting divorced, and of course now it's me and my son, I need to do it not only for myself, but for him, to give him a better life, and to show him that with an education, which even now he's in kindergarten, I have to push that on him, how important school is, because I don't tell him, you're going to go to college. I tell him, you're going to go to college, earn your degree, and then you can do whatever it is you want to do after that. So for him to have seen me graduate in May with my associates, he's small enough, but he can still, thank you. He has that to remember, and that as an inspiration, or for, as an example more than anything.
For me, when I got out in 2009, I didn't really realize how bad the recession was. And so I pretty much put all my eggs in one basket, saying, oh, I'm going to join the LAPD. I had already been called back and was already in the process of hiring. And then I hit a snug, and there was a freeze on everything, so I wasn't going to get hired. And I was like, what am I going to do now? I had my post 9/11 GI benefits, and I was like, well, okay, I'll just go to school until that opens up. And so that's the reason why I started to attend school, just so I could get my my AA and transfer to get my bachelor's in administration of justice, which I currently changed over to communications, because that's something that I really want to do. And that's the reason why I attended school.
So we're going to move into one or more personal stories of a classroom or school experience that had a positive impact on you.
For me, positive impact would, like I said, it was hard to transition from some military life to civilian life, and especially to school. So back in 2010, when our school finally had the Veterans Resource Center, I didn't really know about much of it, because I knew that we had just like a little window in the admissions office. And it wasn't until I met Miriam in a class where she's like, hey, have you heard about this place? I was like, no. I went to it, and man, it was wonderful. A whole room full of veterans that I could talk to and relate to. I felt like I was at home. I was like, wow, man, I could, we help each other out a lot with tutoring. We talk about, take this class, don't take this professor because he sucks or whatever. So that for me was the greatest experience, and it still is one of the greatest experiences at my school. And I really appreciate, us having that type of service there.
Before we move on, I think you raised such a really good point. I think there's an assumption sometimes that when veterans are on campus that they know each other, or that they might know that there's, for example, a Veteran Resource Center on campus. That we assume that they just kind of know that, or somehow identify each other and know each other, that can be true, but it's largely not true. So sometimes it is really important just to say to a veteran, hey, do you know that we have this? If you have a VRC on campus, hey, do you know we have this? Here's where it is. You may want to go check it out. Even that can be tremendously helpful. I've talked to veterans, and you just talked about it, but sorry to interrupt you guys, but I have talked to veterans who have been on campus for a long time before they became aware of the VRC that was there. Just because, kind of like what you were saying, when they came to school, they kept their heads down, they did their work, and then they left, and really just weren't made aware of that. So there is an opportunity for all of us to, when you do have those resources on campus, to really let your veteran students know about them. Sorry to interrupt.
For me, it's kind of like the same thing, the Veteran Center, because like I said, once I started doing work study, and that's when we were still in a small office in admissions. Once we moved over and got our own space, like I said, we started getting more people in. I started opening up, talking to people, getting to know other people, and then my last semester at Cerritos was actually one of my best ones, because even with other veterans in there, we ended up deciding taking classes together, so we'd also form study groups. Or if something comes up that I missed a class, I always have someone to take notes, and so it helped out a lot because our grades improved. Something happened, we were able to talk to the professor. Oh, this person has this going on, they can't make it. So that made it made a difference. And even with other students right now with registration, we're hearing oh no, it's we have quite a few groups that are taking same classes together, and like I said, forming study groups, tutoring, and everything. So we end up helping out each other. In a lot of different ways, even in personal issues. Oh, I've got this going on. Oh, I'm a mechanic. I can help, take a look at your car. Oh, I need to move. Oh, well, I can help you out. I need a ride. Okay, well, I'll pick you up. So it's a lot of the bondingness that we miss that we don't have with other students at all, because they have no idea what we're talking about. All they're used to is living at home, going partying, this, that. So it's a great experience having that center.
Sounds like we're going to have the same story, because that's pretty much my positive experience. I mean, at Las Positas, the VRC, I mean, that's the spot for veterans to hang out and get away from everybody else and share stories, or just, we got a pretty decent study room and a little lounge area, so it's like, that's where we can get away in between classes, whether it's to study or just, I think that's like the best thing we could have had. It's kind of surprising to me talking some students that don't go to Las Positas, how some places don't have a VRC, and it's like, how do you know how to use your benefits? A lot of people getting out of the military, some don't have, it depends on the base if they get an out briefing or not. I mean, sometimes it's just, thanks for your service. Not to sound callous to the military, but like once your time is up, your time is up. You're in the real world. So where are the resources at? Where, there's no signs, So, that's the best experience I could say that I have had. It's just that we have a veteran center. So, yeah.
Yeah. Just caveat that if you're at a school that doesn't have a veteran resource center, you're doing like a huge disservice to all the veterans on campus, because it's a place for, like I said, like veterans have stories that they're not going to share with just anybody. But if you give them a space to where they can kind of just like, hey, they need to talk to somebody, because like I said, not everybody goes and gets treatment for PTSD and stuff, but it might be their outlet where they just need to get something off their chest, and they're not going to share it with anybody, but they go in there and they feel comfortable in that environment. So that's a good thing. But my story is actually when I first came, I tested, you do a little assessment test to find out where you're at on your education level. And of course, I've been at school for 8 years, so I was at the bottom, and I didn't know how to write a paper for anything. And I had a teacher who actually just sat down with me, and he was just really, he was interested in me just being a veteran. He just thought it was like amazing, but he just paid attention to that just enough where he was just like, why don't you write about something that happened over there, and it was just something like I never shared with anybody before, and he was like, why don't you write a paper? You don't even have to share the paper with anybody besides me, And he's like, and I'm not gonna judge you in any way, just a grade on how you write the paper. And so I wrote a story I'm not gonna tell you what the story was, but it was a good thing to just like get off my chest. So that was a good experience.
And you felt better about writing papers.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
When I was first retired, I went through San Bernardino County Sheriff's Academy, and it was ran in conjunction with a community college down there. And when I went in to use some of my veterans benefits, I walked to a cubicle and I was handed papers and told to fill these out and come back. And then transitioning to Las Positas College, it was a stark contrast in comparison. Being at a school where the faculty and staff legitimately care and have a vested interest in your well-being and your success, it's a game changer for you. I was a 1.7 GPA student when I was in high school. I barely graduated. I carry a 3.6 right now at Las Positas, and it's and a huge part of that is because the faculty and staff genuinely care about you, and the Veterans Resource Center is a huge component of that. I mean, most people would look at me like I'm crazy when I walk up and say, hey, you know what? I miss getting in gunfights. And I can walk up to the guys in the VRC and say, hey, you know, I'm thinking about this, there's just certain things that I miss. And they understand what I'm going through and what I'm feeling. And most people look at me like I'm crazy. And these guys, we laugh about it. And to throw Todd Stephan under the bus, I mean, he's the butt of our jokes a lot of time because he's in there with us and he hears us every day and he probably thinks we're crazy and he probably deserves a medal for dealing with us on a daily basis. But, I mean, just having somebody like him and all the faculty and staff at school that care, and it shows in how you're treated and what they'll do to help you succeed at school.
Wonderful. And you may have answered this a little bit, but going back, one personal story or stories of classroom or school experiences that had a negative impact on you that were not positive?
Again, it's the two things where, like I said, I'm not going to throw the college under the bus, but when I went there, they literally had a gentleman that where his, as a certified official, it was a part-time job in conjunction with other duties he had. And then, that was really challenging. And I mean, luckily I was employed at the time through the sheriff's department, so it wasn't too bad for me. But seeing the difference between that and what Las Positas College offers, it's huge. It changes your entire perspective and your attitude towards school. And I can directly attribute my success to that. And the other component of that is when there's faculty that can't maintain order in a classroom, I don't deal well in a chaotic environment like that, coming from a very structured environment, but I was also trained to adapt and to take control and fix things. And if I'm in a class where there's no control and I can't focus on what I'm there to do, I'm going to take control. It's who I've been since I was 17 years old. And so that's some of the biggest challenges for me.
I think some of the biggest challenges for me, going back to school, was just having to deal with, like they said, like the 19-year-old, 18-year-old kid that, and it's not even really their fault, but they're unaware of what's out there in the world, and they ask questions sometimes that are just very inappropriate, and they don't like the answer I get. Like, I've been asked, like, have you ever killed anybody? And when you answer, yeah, you get that look back, like, what? You're like, yeah, that's what happened, that's what I did over there, And it's just a kind of a challenge where, and then it kind of makes the situation just uncomfortable for all parties involved. Like they're looking at you weird. You're like, why are you asking me these questions? These personal questions, and they're curious, but it's just a stress that you have to deal with.
It sounds like an echo, I guess, if I mention the students. I mean, we realized we're going back to students with a bunch of kids, and our choice was to join the military after high school. For me, I know enough people that didn't know what they wanted to major in, and ahead of me, they changed their major 3 or 4 times, and for me, it was like, okay, I joined the military, because it was a stable thing to do. You know, I knew I wanted to go to college, but I didn't know what. So joining the military just gave me some focus. So I understand going to school now with a bunch of 19-year-olds, and you know, it can be a challenge. But at Las Positas, there's no real negative story other than just trying to transition in with everybody else, and it can be a challenge. It can be entertaining sometimes too, I guess. But we deal with it. So.
For me, it's some of the same things that they've said, but for me as a female veteran, some of the issues was not necessarily with the staff, was with other veterans as a work study, because I had one of them when I had just started working as a work study, and that's before we had the VRC. He even made a comment, "Oh, you got this job because of your husband, right?" And he was turning in his packet, so I'm looking at his DD 214. I told him, "No, I have more time in combat than you have in the service." So he just kind of shut up, and his attitude since then has been completely different. And same thing with other veterans. I mean, I don't come out and tell them, "Oh, I'm a veteran," but once they found out, their attitude changed completely. They saw me as an equal. They saw me different when other times they try to act very aggressively, or if they didn't like the answer I was giving them, you know, trying to just treated me differently. Like I said, afterwards, it changed completely. So,
For me, one of the negative things that's ever happened to me in school was we were watching a documentary on the Holocaust, and these survivors were telling their stories. And for me, you know, after losing, you know, friends in combat, I got very emotional. I started crying in class, and then I hear these kids, you know, just like laughing about what's going on and just be very inappropriate. And I got into a very dark place, and I felt like I really wanted to hurt them, but I knew that it wasn't their fault. So what I ended up doing was just getting out of that situation. I got out, you know, left the class for a little bit and tried to calm myself. So that affected me a lot, but I didn't want it I didn't want to quit the class because I wanted to continue my education. I was like, no, I have to stick it out. I never told the professor because I didn't want to be treated differently. I just wanted to be like any other student. And so I never told the professor about, you know, that I was a veteran, how much that affected me or whatever. But that was one of the most negative things that's ever happened to me in school.
Did you want to add to that? Yeah.
You know, it's funny with these guys talking about being able to talk about their experiences. Next to Todd, I probably get ribbed the most being in the Air Force, or the Chair Force, or however everybody like to call it. So it's interesting. And if you consider a VRC or have a VRC, consider putting a soundproof room in there so that way these guys can get their stories out. Because some of the things they say sometimes really scare me sometimes. So, but I understand it and I can relate to an extent. But you know, these guys really need a place to be amongst fellow veterans and just. And again, they say some things that might sound a little crazy, but you know, you can only put into words what you've experienced, I'm sure, and to be able to share that and to talk about it. At least they're talking about it, you know. But again, that soundproof room probably is the best deal. But but this is what they need. They need a place to talk about this. So.
If I want to just before we move on to the next question, I think you guys are all hinting at something without actually saying it because you're all being very diplomatic. I think one of the things that you're talking about when you're talking about students talking in the classroom and students being disrespectful is you're kind of hinting at maybe that you would like instructors to rethink their class management when it comes to that issue. That I think you're being very nice about the way that you're saying it, but you're really asking for instructors to be really cognizant of when students are being disrespectful, when they're talking on their cell phones, and when they're impeding your learning and texting, right? I assume that's what that was, yeah. And texting, and to really feel like they are going to jump in for you, so that you don't have to, but also so that you can really get out of it what you came in there for. So that's, for me, as someone who does these panels periodically, I'd say that that's a comment that's pretty much universal. Now, obviously, maybe there's some different expectations coming from the military, but both as older students, I think, and as coming from the military, really wanting the instructor to have a slightly different control of the classroom is something I hear a lot. And it seems like all of you can have echoed that. Yeah. let's move on to one accomplishment or more than one accomplishment that you had while in the service that you are the most proud of.
For me, when I was deployed in Iraq, I was there as a motor transport operator, motor T operator for an infantry company, and not to offend any grunts or anything, but they pretty much can't drive. So we had this one time where they drove into a ditch and they were stuck in the mud. You know, they had the Humvee up and the wheels were were showing and everything, and they called me up. He told me, hey, we need you to take your 7-ton, which is a very big truck, and see if you could pull them out. When I get to location about 15 minutes later, I was like, man, there's no way we can pull this thing out, like, at all. But anyway, I decided to give it a try, and ended up, hooking my chains up to the thing, to the Humvee, pulling it on my truck, having one of the grunts jump in, and I was like, when I tell you to turn the wheel this certain way, you do it, and just haul ass, put, pedal to the metal. And I start backing up. He does what I told him to do, and we got it out of there in like 10 minutes. So that was very exhilarating. Not only that, it's because like we were in a situation where we could have gotten attacked at any moment. So the fact that they trusted me enough to get that done was very, I don't know, I felt very accomplished. It was very fulfilling for me, and that was one of the proudest moments I had. I think while I served.
For me, I actually had a couple of them. The first one was getting promoted to sergeant, because in my job, admin, it's one of the biggest. So it's actually hard to get promoted, and I got promoted fairly quick. I had a little bit over 2 years, so that was very important for me, especially because my mom was there to pin my rank on me, so that was very important. The second one was, like I had said before, I was not born in this country, was when I became a U.S. citizen, because I was in uniform when I did it. And then the third one was, like I said, being a sergeant, being an NCO, I was in charge of quite a few soldiers throughout the 10 years that I was in the service. So seeing them now, I'm still keeping in touch with a lot of them, and like we tell them, you grow up in your military career, so seeing them getting promoted, they still contact me, they still ask me for advice. And just seeing them, those achievements, it's a good self-accomplishment that I was able to guide them in certain different ways for them to better themselves in the military.
One of my proudest moments in the Air Force was for about 8 months. I actually volunteered to be in the Honor Guard at Nellis Air Force Base. In southern Nevada and California, that region, it's a pretty decent size retired military community. And the hardest thing to do when you're performing the Honor Guard is for military funerals, and to hand off that flag to the spouse or the next of kin. And you're there representing the military during their grief, and you're just letting them know how much their spouse's service meant to all of us. So even for 8 months of doing that takes a toll on you. And I know one day I'm gonna have to do that for my own father, and like he did for my grandfather, Air Force. I come from a line of military men. So for me, I was just a proud moment for being able to return the favor while I was in the military. That's what I felt like service was for me. So.
I think the most proudest thing is when I was a freshman in high school, September 11 happened, and I said I was going to go and join the Army and go fight the people who did that, and I ended up doing that, so that's kind of was the most proudest thing for me.
For me, it's not one particular instance. The biggest thing for me was completing my mission. Actually completing what we were asked to do and making sure my Marines come home alive. There's no bigger fear as a leader than to have somebody that you've trained and practiced and lived with for months, see them lose their life. And every operation, every mission I was ever on, that my Marines came home alive, and we did our job to the best of our ability. Those are my proudest moments.
All right. Last question for everyone, and then we'll open it up for general questions. to ask you to say a few words about your future goals. You're in school now, and I think you're all in school now. What are your goals? Where would you like to be after this?
I want to get a Juris Doctorate and specialize in constitutional law and become a veteran advocate.
All right.
I'd like to transfer to San Francisco State and get a BS in chemistry.
Well, coming from Texas, looking at Berkeley is a little far-fetched, but I'd love to go to Berkeley. Electrical engineering, that's what I'm trying to do. It's a long way, but that's one of my goals. So.
I'm currently at the University of Laverne, and my goal is to complete my my degree, my bachelor's in business administration, and then go for my majors. But my ultimate goal is to work with the veterans organization, working with veterans.
My goal is to transfer to Cal State Fullerton, where I'll have my degree in communications, so I can get into either the marketing, entertainment, or advertising, and go from there.
Okay. So with that, we're done with the questions that I have. Let's take some time to ask the panel any questions that you have. If there's someone in particular on the panel that you want to ask a question to, feel free. And if you want to just ask the panel in general to respond to something, that's fine too. David, are you walking around with a microphone? Yeah. Anyone? All right.
Well, it's sort of been touched on already, both by yourselves and the moderator, but I got the impression that many of you not only have more broad life experiences than the students that you have to attend with, but you may also have broader life experiences than the instructors you're supposedly learning from. Do any of you ever feel like that?
I don't, in the sense because I feel like at least my professors that I've taken know what they're talking about, and that's something that I can't take away from them, because that's their area of expertise, and so everyone has different life experience regardless of what they are. Whether you're 18, 19 years old, I'll never know what they've gone through, and they'll probably never know what I went through. So I don't feel that way that I might have more life experience than other people, but I guess that's something that us veterans say, that we do have more life experience, and I guess we do. But me personally, no, I don't think that.
Just if anyone else wants to have something else to say.
Yeah, as far as instructors, I don't think there's a lot of I'm here to learn, and that's why I took your class or go to school is to learn from the instructors. Yeah.
I have a little different perspective than a lot of you. I'm 38 years old. I would never say that I have more life experience, but I definitely have different life experience. I don't think no matter who you are or how old you are, you're going to have a different perspective on a particular subject than I will, and you're going to bring different things and different perspectives to the table that I can learn from, no matter whether you're 22 or 62. I've had a fair amount of my teachers have been younger than me, and so it's not that I have more experience. I have a different experience, and so I mean I've been a lot of places. I was in for a long time, and so like I said, it's a different experience as opposed to what they bring to the table.
Well, thank you for being so diplomatic. I do have one follow-up question, though, something completely different topic. Have any of you experienced working with or being around anybody in some other of the civilian veterans organizations? And what is your opinion?
Can you repeat?
I was wondering if any of you had ever had experience with members of some of the various civilian veterans organizations, such as American Legion, VFW, that sort of thing.
Personally, I'm a member of a local American Legion Veterans of Foreign Wars, and I'm very active with the Wounded Warrior Project. Some of the older, more established veteran service organizations like the VFW and the American Legion, there's some generational challenges there because of a lot of, they want to help you and they want to do good by you, but there's also that drive for membership. Whereas, like with the Wounded Warrior Project, it serves specifically post 9/11 veterans, and there really is no membership commitment at all. They ask that you join an alumni association that they have, so that way it's a peer support group. But I mean, they're all doing good. It's just sometimes there's strings attached with the help that they provide, and that's. I mean, overall, I think they're doing good things and they're trying to help.
For me, since I'm a work study, I work with civilian personnel all the time, and especially our certifying officials. I mean, they're great. They're great people. Our counselor, our staff in general, and they're very passionate about what they do, and you get a sense of that they really do want to help the veterans out, and not just that, but other resources too, where they touch upon AMVETS, and anyone who works with the VA or any personnel that wants to help the veterans is great, and so I really appreciate that. For all of you guys too, to caring so much for us and trying to help us out. I really appreciate it, coming from me. Thank you.
I'm going to follow in Joe's footsteps. He was a former president of the Students Veterans Organization at Las Positas. I've actually just been nominated for next year. So I'm actually really interested in working with a lot of the civilian groups in our local area. So feel free to talk to me afterwards. But we're really trying to promote the Student Veteran Organization at Las Positas, and anything that we can give in return. We get a lot of thanks and we get a lot of recognition, and it's not that I'm ashamed to receive it. I mean, I went in, I volunteered to join the military. I did my job as far as I was concerned, and I do get a lot of thanks for it. I mean, I wear the uniform outside the base, and it's like I forget I'm wearing a uniform and people are looking at me. So it's like I'd like to give it back. So anybody in the local community, anything we can do with the civilian groups, we're looking forward to helping you guys out as well. So.
I just wonder if you could follow up with a little more information on your veterans group. We just started a veterans club at Berkeley City College, and it's brand new. So any advice you'd give our students for getting that organization going?
It's kind of complicated. It's going to depend on the culture at the school. It's like most things, you're going to have a core group of people that are going to be the most active. And it's really up to that core group to network and reach out to their friends and, I hate to say it, but exploit their personal relationships with other veterans to get them involved. It's going to take a few people that are really dedicated and want to work real hard, but if the more support that you can give that core group, the more successful you're going to be. That's the biggest thing for me and at our school.
Yeah, that's going to be the challenge, is membership. The older military crowd, some of them just want to go to school and get out of school. I mean, and they've put in their time, and being 8 years in, we did a lot of community service while we were in the military, so to come out and be able to still continue to have a support, like the Student Veterans Organization, we're there to do more community service. So it's just advertising, it's just trying to get the veterans to come help us out at the school, give them a place that they need to organize, give them a place they need to have their meetings and to work with the rest of the school. We're not trying to be a standalone. We're definitely part of the Las Positas community. We're trying to work with the other students as well and give back any way we can. So just give them the space they need, advertise, and I think that's, I guess, the best thing that you can start off with at the very least.
For us at Cerritos, we definitely advertised it a lot of the VRC. We also had a lot of students that were civilian students. And there were times that we had more civilian students in the Veterans Club, but they were still helping out. They would help us out with all the activities, fundraisings, and the float building, and all the activities, and they were very involved, so that started getting more, and even working with other clubs. They started hearing the word, because obviously we have veterans that are not all in the Veterans Club. They're also involved in other clubs, so we also work together with them, with the business club, and like I said, all the different clubs on campus, and just get them involved and get the word out. That's the biggest thing.
And if anybody wants to contact myself or Todd, Stefan, I'm more than willing to help and give any advice that I can in any time.
Before we move on to another question, let me just kind of jump into and say one experience that I've had moderating a number of student panels is that if there's ever an indication of how well a community college is addressing the needs of their veterans, if there's ever an indication of whether they have a robust VRC or robust veteran service part of their campus, you will see it represented on this panel. And so whenever I've done panels where they come from community colleges that didn't have that, you typically heard veterans answering the questions about negative impact at school in a really, really different way. And it's been interesting for me because I usually try to get them to answer, I sort of pick at them, be like, come on, it has to be something worse than that. I keep trying to get them to really say the bad stuff that's happened because this is their opportunity to do it. And in this case, it didn't happen. There just weren't things to say other than what you've already heard. A similar thing happened. We did a similar training at Solano College with Amy. Amy, you can wave your hand now. I'm going to pick on you. And so clearly, you can see the value of the veteran service, of the VRCs, and the representatives who are really working hard and providing services to their veterans, because it very clearly shows up in these panels. And when it doesn't exist, when folks like Todd or Nancy or Amy, those of you guys are the ones that I know, aren't there doing those things, this panel would sound really, really different. And so definitely to recognize you all, but also to recognize the tremendous importance of having those services on your campus. So if I could just plug that.
Hi, I'm a nursing instructor, and I'm known as the strict one, who is always known as the hardest because I do expect professional work behaviors in the classroom. I wish I could clone you guys and bring you back to talk to my nursing class to say, she's not just mean, there's other students who would like to have this too. But my question is regarding my students who are graduating, who there are several that have come to me talking about, I would really like to go work in a veterans hospital. Advice for them. Some of them are vets. They have a clear view of what they would be getting into. But some of them aren't, who really, as you are saying, have not had those life experiences. How would you encourage them to look at that role for their future and give them the best guidance?
So is the question, are there non-veterans trying to work at a VA hospital, for example? It might be a very generic answer. Obviously, get the schooling that you need to qualify. And I have a friend, but he's a veteran. He just recently became a radiology technician, and I mean, it was kind of easy for him as a former veteran to probably work at a VA hospital. I'm not sure if that's the standard necessarily, or if it helps or not. But I think what we've learned being in the military is you need the education. So either way, just complete your classes, get any internships you can pick up. I do remember that's something that he did, is internships. And don't just focus on one particular place. Open yourself up. I mean, there's people that I've known that never been outside of California. I mean, you can always come back eventually, but internship anywhere that it's open. I mean, open yourself up outside the state. I mean, you don't have to be in the military to leave California. It's funny to hear that some people that haven't left the East Bay at all. It's like, there's life out there. Don't, I think that's the biggest thing, is just get out, put your applications, East Coast, just get away from home for a little bit. They need the experience away from home. I think that's what they need. And then, because that's what the VA is all about. You get all these military vets there that's been all this experience, kind of what we're saying. well, then I think anybody that has more experience themselves can relate and be able to help out. So I think that might be an important step, at least.
I'm going to touch on, like, for me, I think it's going to be more a how to succeed around veterans specifically. A lot of times people consider us very standoffish because, you know, it's in our nature. You know, we're not going to just walk up and tell you our life story. We're not going to spill our guts about, you know, where we've been, what we've seen, what we've done. And it's the biggest thing I can say is, you know, give time to build those relationships and earn our trust. You know, don't push us and don't start asking us about, you know, like Jeremy was saying, you know, how many gunfights have you been in? How many people have you shot? If we want to tell you, and if you've earned our respect and our trust that much, we'll tell you what we've been and what we've seen and done. And if you try to push that out of us or try to pry it out of us, that's not going to go over well, and we're going to react adversely. And the best thing that they can do is be patient and give time for that relationship to grow and to earn our trust and let us open up.
Yeah, my name is Jeremy, and I'm. This question is coming from a certifying official's point of view. But first, I need to say I'm kind of classic example of the kid laughing in class. You know, I'm older now, but my question is, given that I have a short amount of time with you guys, when I meet you and give you the paperwork and the rundown and this and that, what sort of strategy? What is the? What is the strategy in meeting with you guys if it's only just for 5 or 10 minutes or even 20 minutes, and you know, and then we don't see you until the new semester, you know, because I'm not a counselor or anything like that.
So you said you're a certifying official, correct? As far as our VRC, I'm a work study. Miriam is also a work study. We work closely with our certifying officials, and so we pretty much cross-train with them, and we have almost the same things that you guys can, but we just don't submit, you know, to the VA once and all that stuff. But I feel if you do that, if you hire, you know, work with your work studies and you cross-train them on what you do, we in the front desk, you know, when we talk to the veterans, we'll explain to them more about, you know, their benefits and all that stuff. So I feel like if you do that, and if you get your other veterans to you know, as work studies to work with other veterans, then you increase, you know, what you want, you know, that time or that knowledge of whatever you want to, you know, pass to them.
As far as that, I mean, I know as certifying officials, you guys don't always have the one-on-one like we do at the front more with the, working with the veterans. But sometimes we might also pick up on stuff that the certifying official might not. So just talking to them, we might tell the certifying official, okay, this student, you might have to watch out for this, or you kind of look out for this. It kind of looks, and also on our checklist, we also have in the back all kinds of different services that the student needs to find out their individual needs. So they'll check off on there, and then we'll follow up. We'll follow up on whether they're interested in financial aid, mental health, and all these other things that, like even for me, sometimes it's easier to check off a block than actually speak up and tell someone, oh, I'm having difficulties with this. So I think that also helps out a lot. And like I said, some of them, we've noticed, like I said, they'll open up more to us first before they do to any one of the staff. So that also helps out a lot.
Maybe just to tag along on that is just educate yourself in the different programs that are out there. I mean, you might get a lot of random questions, and so the more you know about the different scenarios, whether it's the different chapters or the different services they need, counseling, just be prepared for a wide range of questions, and the more you can educate yourself, that way you can answer them appropriately. I mean, you'll get some very direct questions, and a very direct answers it helps them out and makes you look credible, and, you know, not that you're not, you know what I'm saying, it's just the more you know to be able to give them the information they need, the better. So.
And I'm actually just going to tag on to that and say, obviously there are going to be limitations in your time and also what you can know. But I'll say this to everyone, that one of the best ways that I think you can be of assistance is to know who knows the answer. You don't have to know the answer, but know who knows the answer, and not in a general sense, right? So if somebody seems like they may be a good referral for counseling, you might want to refer them to the vet center, for example, where I work. But don't just say, hey, you should call the vet center. Say, here's a flyer, like have actually a relationship with us, for example, or with a VA, local VA, and say, here's a flyer, I've actually met with them, you should call Joe, you should call Sam. This is usually when this person is here, and then the more you can do that with Voc Rehab, you can do that with the VA, you can do that with the vet center, you can do that in a lot of different ways where you don't have to know the answer, but you can do a warm handoff so that you're not just sending the veteran into some other building somewhere, right? So you could say, well, Voc Rehab's supposed to do that, and then they say, okay, but then now they have to go navigate a whole other system starting from scratch. And if you've done some of that legwork and you say, you know what, go to Voc Rehab, here's where it is, here's when it's open, and I've heard good reports from this counselor, or maybe not so good reports about that Voc Rehab counselor, then that, first of all, establishes a lot of credibility, but now you've really, really helped the veteran, because where we notice, and you guys may echo this, where veterans get stuck is in between those things, right? Where you say, well, I don't really know how to do it, I think so-and-so should know, and it's in that gap that they may just give up. And so to the degree that we can really hand carry veterans from one spot to the next, and this would be true of anyone, but particularly because there's so many different systems you have to navigate with benefits and so forth, we're going to see a much higher degree of success. Agreed? Yeah, okay, good. Any other questions?
A quick one to the work studies. I'm a veteran counselor. We have a VRC. I'll go in one day, there'll be 5 or 6, and we're talking up a storm. Next day, 15 minutes will go by, no one says a word. Do you experience that what's going on?
As far as no one talking, what I usually do is I just play music and sing along to the music, and then that'll create a conversation. So I guess it just depends on the people, and you just got to give them time. Give them time to get comfortable with the people around them, and just kind of open up. Like it took me a while to kind of get familiarize myself with the staff, and I know what I can and cannot get away with. So usually I just play music and sing along or dance or whatever.
That, and we usually tell them to keep it down because he's singing Disney songs, so we're like, enough. But no, so we have that at times, and we actually enjoy it, because other times we enjoy the quiet, because the majority of the time we're telling the veterans, you need to keep it down because they get too loud. Yeah. So we have more of that issue with because even, ourselves, yeah, we do get loud, and the room, yeah, it's a good size, but yeah, once we get a few of us, we do tend to get loud, so we have to end up monitoring ourselves and telling each other, all right, keep it down, or once we see something, okay, that person's studying, keep it down, calm down, and but yeah, we actually kind of enjoy those quiet moments we get.
I'd actually like to talk on a moment on also with the certifying officials. With the work studies, they're going to come and go, so I think it's imperative that as a certifying official, you're kind of the gatekeeper to some of that tribal knowledge that is learned as people go through these processes. And it's important that, that those people that have the knowledge of those things are identified, and you try to learn from them. So that way, when your next group of work studies come, or your next veterans that want to be heavily involved, you can say, hey, here's somebody you can talk to learn more about these processes. Because, like they're saying, the veterans are going to come to other veterans first. As a president student of Veterans Organization, I held office hours in the VRC, and I had veterans come to me with counseling issues, personal issues, financial issues that they didn't want to share with staff. And if I couldn't help them, I'd know people that I could point them to that could directly help them.
Back to the last gentleman. If you had 15 minutes of silence, enjoy it. We're promoting, we're trying to ask for our own individual standalone building, for our own little area, and it's definitely not to be away from other students or to be not part of the school. It's probably for the safety of everybody listening, and yeah, I mean, we have a good time, and then, like I said, if you have silence, that's good, but it's important to enjoy it while I can, I guess.
I was just wondering what advice you have for counselors working with veterans, and is there anything that has helped you the most or has not helped you the most that they've said?
Are you talking about as far as like education counselors? I think just being like having a plan to being direct with them and kind of explaining why they would do certain things, like take these classes over that might help them for those degrees would be the most beneficial thing, because coming back, they don't know anything about college, you know, they've been doing the military thing, and so they're kind of stepping into a campus, most of them for the first time, and they don't know what classes they're supposed to take and in what order and stuff like that. So I think just laying it out step by step is probably the most beneficial.
I would also say try to work closely with your certifying officials, just so that when you give an education plan to a veteran, that veteran, you know, can when he turns in all his paperwork to the certifying official, they don't run into a problem where it's like, oh, this student is taking this one class that's not on your ed plan, then you have to, like, it'll take, you know, days before you even reach the student. Hey, you need to go and talk to your counselor again, you know. So I would say just work closely with your certifying officials to make sure that, you know, there's an easy transition in that aspect.
For me, I would say make sure the counselor is knowledgeable, because when I first got to Cerritos, the counselor, he had been there for years. He had been doing veterans counseling for years, but the times I actually met with him, every single time he gave me conflicting information that made no sense. I would ask him one thing, he's like, oh, remind me next time you see me. I'd ask him. He had no idea what I was talking about. Even simple paperwork that I had to get credit for like the CLEP exam, he had me going on a hunt. Oh, go to this office, go to this office. Come to find out, I turned it into admissions. And then the counselor we have now, he's amazing. Anything you ask him, well, he's over there. He has an answer for you, which we also have a grade. They implemented something on our website, which I think is wonderful, which is a link directly to him. Even there's also one to the certifying official, and it goes to a few of us of the work studies. So regardless of who's there, they can ask any question about whether it's certification, benefits prior to registration, anything it is. It's directly on our website. And any of us can answer at any time. And same thing as the counselor. There's one directly for him, and even like the days he's not working at Cerritos, he'll still reply to students. So we actually put him on the spot, but he was even replying when he was on vacation in Mexico to students. So that's, you know, we have a lot of staff that's very dedicated and they definitely go above and beyond outside of their hours, and, you know, to make sure that the students get all the information. And more importantly, because for a lot of us, for me, that's my primary income. So if I don't get paid, I can't pay rent, I can't take care of my child, so it's very important that our stuff is correct.
Yeah, it's imperative that counselors are aware that when you're certifying a post 9/11, you have a specific path that you have to take. You don't have the luxury of taking fluff classes a lot of times just to fill your credits for that semester. If it's not in your ed plan, you don't get paid for it. And I mean, I've had several instances where veterans come to me and like, oh God, you know, I need to change my major because I don't have enough. I've already taken all my classes. I only have 1 or 2 classes left. What do I do? And well, you need to go back and redo your ed plan and actually officially change your major for a couple semesters, so that way you can still receive your benefits, because that's your primary source of income until you transfer.
I think we've got time for 1 or 2 more questions.
So this is actually a comment. I'm at a campus where we don't have a Veterans Resource Center, and you have all really inspired me. And I've moved from desire to determination. I like have a plan in my head about what I'm going to say and who I'm going to say it to. So I thank you for that. And the other thing is that found myself thinking when I was listening to you talk about how you couldn't necessarily transfer your military experience to your vocational goals now or your educational goals, and there were actual conversations that were running through my mind of some of the vets that I work with that are making really different choices compared to what they did in the military. But I was thinking, but this, and this that you did in the military absolutely does apply to the profession you're choosing. But I didn't say it to them when I was in the room with them. And so I'm really inspired to pay more attention to that when I'm listening to people describe their experience to me, to really think, like, where are they going to take that into the profession, even if it's really different? Just the leadership skills that you have and the skills that you have in working with people are invaluable.
Just to follow, I went to there's always people that are trying to help veterans write resumes and stuff like that kind of transfer their military skills into something that somebody would understand. And I've been to a couple, and I was like, whoa, that doesn't really help at all. And I actually got a chance to go to Google, and they have like veterans that work at Google and stuff, which is a very successful company. And I sat down with this lady who has had a doctorate in literature, and she sat there for like an hour, just talked to me, and she was like, well, what did you do? And I was explaining to her, like, oh, I went on missions, and we handed out humanitarian aid supplies to a village, and she was like, well, I got, it's on my resume now. I can't remember the exact words, but basically she said it was I had overseen and distributed logistical supplies or something like that, and I was like, is that what I did? Like, all right, and I was like, wow. And she actually sat there and she gave me a lot of bullet points, and it was very eye-opening though that like, and I don't have the vocabulary yet to to me it wasn't that. To me, I handed out humanitarian aid supplies in a village, but she broke it down kind of I would say Barney style, and just like, this is what you did, and it was very helpful. And I think if you guys have those kind of skills to give those on to other veterans, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, like you said, being able to articulate your skill set and the things that you did in the military to a vernacular that the average person can understand is critical. I mean, almost everybody coming from the military learns they have a certain skill set, and there's certain like traits and skills that they learn that are corporations pay millions and millions of dollars to take their leadership to, that you're force-fed at 18, 19, 20 years old. And I mean, these are skills that 35, 40-year-old people midway through their career paths are just beginning to be exposed to, that you've grown up with. And being able to articulate those skills to a civilian employer is a challenge.
Hi, my name is LaShawn. I'm from the College of Alameda, and my biggest dilemma, I'm a certified official for the College of Alameda, and my biggest dilemma with the veterans is getting them to participate. And I was wondering if you can give me some ideas, because I understand transitioning back into the civilian life is a job in itself, and then they have school, and then they have home. So, I mean, being at school for the short time that they have, I don't know if or how to pull them in to saying, hey, we're here for you, we want to help you. We are in the works of getting our VRC up and going, but in the meantime, I was thinking about maybe a vet club. But if they're not even coming out, like I just recently put on a Veterans Appreciation Day, just to let them know that, hey, we appreciate you, we appreciate your service and all that you've done, and we're here for you. And we are a small campus, and I think I have about maybe 100, 150 now, and I had like 2 veterans show up. And I put out emails, and I did the blast, and I'm like, well, am I doing something wrong? What is it? How can I get them to come out? Because we are here for them.
One word: mandatory. Just make everything. Yeah, what we do at our VRC is whenever we want something done, we always say mandatory, and we'll even lie to the veterans and say, look, your benefits will be cut if you don't attend this orientation. And we'll usually entice them with Taco Man, which we're having on Tuesday. So, when we have functions like that, we usually tell them, okay, before you get your tacos, you need to go and see the van, the VA van that's outside. Once you've done that, you have to do this. Then you can get your tacos. But like when we send out the email blast and everything, we always say mandatory. We don't even give them the option anymore because we come to realize that they won't attend. I remember I got an email and I was like, do I have to attend this? No, not really. Okay, then I didn't even go. The next time that happened, it said mandatory, and I was like, oh man, is this really mandatory? And I was a work study, so I should know this. But I was like, oh, okay, I'll go, and I have to lead the example to all the other veterans as well. So yeah, make everything mandatory.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Like I said, I mean, being a work study, being a veteran, I have no problem telling them with a straight face, hey, it's mandatory for the orientations or any major events that we have. The first thing we're like, well, what happens if I go? You're not gonna get paid. They're like, can you really do that? Absolutely. So we put that, and like I said, we have great staff, which sometimes, we've had taco days, which we get huge turnouts. They've also had incentives at times, either with raffles, and we get a big turnout, but like I said, we always make sure we get them to do what it is we want to do first before they get the food. But yeah, if you always tell them it's mandatory, or if you put that there's gonna be food, veterans will be there.
Yeah, same thing. Like, I think once you build the VRC, you'll start seeing more people show up, because it's like Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come type stuff. And then everything, like she said, food. Like, if we offer free food, like all of a sudden, like people come out we never seen before. Like I didn't even know you were a veteran. He's like, well, there's free food here. So I'm a veteran now.
And that's funny. We get our physical education waived too, and so we're all feeding all the time. It's like consistency. I think that's a big thing. I mean, if you want to promote something, you have to be consistent, because the minute you slouch a little bit, then they're not going to take you seriously on certain events. So that is going to be one of our challenges as well. We see the same 10, 15 people show up every event, and it's like, I love them, but I'm tired of looking at you, No, I think we've got almost 200 plus, 275 veterans, registered veterans, and we're trying to figure that ourselves. And one of our goals is communication, consistency, make sure that the events. Yeah, we've got multiple ways. I mean, Todd is great with the emails, but everybody knows that Todd is one of the only ones that sends out emails, and it's from do this to volunteer for this to, people stop looking at his emails. There's just so many emails that he sends out, so it's like you get blind eye to it. So we're coming up with different ways maybe. I mean, there are some younger military members that are veterans that do Facebook now. Maybe the older generation prefers a website. Make more than one way available to communicate to the other veterans. I mean, if they think it's just a bunch of kids hanging around in the office being loud, the older veterans, they're just going to be like, I don't have time for that. It's not a serious organization. So, provide some stability and consistency. I think that'll hopefully draw them in. Communicate with us. We'll let you know. We'll work together. Figure that out ourselves.
All right.
I just wanted to add, if you do end up creating your VRCs, just make sure you create a code of conduct in your sources. We do get rowdy, so once we see that, it's like, okay, now we have to take it down a notch and just make sure we police ourselves, So I just wanted to make sure you guys, did that.
And on that note, I think we're going to conclude our student panel. I obviously want to thank our panelists. Wish you guys the best of luck. Thank you for coming.